"If you can play this harp, I'll give you my fortune," laughed the billionaire, but the cleaner silenced them all. Richard Thompson was at the peak of his arrogance during yet another extravagant party at his mansion in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles. The 45-year-old businessman had built a real estate empire and loved humiliating those he considered beneath him, especially in front of his socialite friends who frequented his luxurious events. That's when his eyes landed on Emily Wilson, 28, who was quietly cleaning the Italian marble floor near the golden harp that adorned the center of the main hall. The instrument was a rare piece, gold-plated, which had cost over $500,000 and served only as decoration. "Look at this," Richard shouted, pointing at Emily with his glass of French champagne. "Our dear cleaner is admiring my harp." The 5 women accompanying him, all dressed in expensive red gowns, immediately turned their attention to the scene. Victoria Bennett, wife of a judge; Megan Cooper, daughter of a congressman; Stephanie Miller, heiress to a traditional family; Jennifer Parker, married to a famous doctor; and Catherine Scott, owner of a chain of aesthetic clinics, began laughing maliciously. "Does she even know what a harp is?" Megan mocked, taking another sip of her drink. "She probably thinks it's a giant coat hanger," added Victoria, sparking more laughter from the group. Emily felt her face burn with shame, but kept cleaning the floor without looking up. She needed that job. For 3 years, she had worked for the cleaning company that serviced Richard's mansion, and it was the money from this job that supported her and her mother, Grace, who had health issues. "Hey you," Richard called, clapping his hands as if summoning an animal. "Come here." Emily swallowed hard and slowly approached, carrying her bucket and cleaning cloth. Her hands trembled slightly, but she kept her posture straight, trying to preserve her dignity. "What's your name again?" Richard asked, pretending not to know, even though she had worked there for so long. "Emily Wilson, sir." "Emily Wilson," he repeated, savoring each syllable as if it were a joke. "Have you ever played a harp, Emily Wilson?" The women laughed even louder. Catherine even held her stomach, pretending she was in pain from laughing so hard. "No, sir," Emily replied, keeping her eyes down. "I didn't think so," Richard laughed. "But you know what I'll do? I'll give you a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." He walked over to the harp, making a theatrical gesture with his arms wide open. "If you can play this harp—" He paused dramatically, glancing at his friends who were already anticipating the punchline. "I'll give you my entire fortune." The burst of laughter was deafening. The 5 women doubled over, some even spilling their drinks on the floor from shaking with amusement. "Richard, you're terrible," Jennifer cried between laughs. "The poor thing will break the strings," Stephanie added. Emily felt her eyes fill with tears, but something inside her rebelled. She raised her face for the first time since being called, and her dark eyes met Richard's. There was something in that gaze that made the businessman's laughter die in his throat. "Are you serious, sir?" Emily asked, her voice firmer than she expected. "Of course I am," Richard replied, still smiling but slightly unsettled by the shift in the young woman's demeanor. "My entire fortune! But of course you won't even manage to play a single note." Emily set the bucket down and wiped her hands on her apron. She walked slowly toward the harp, under the amused, mocking gazes of the guests. When she reached the instrument, she extended her hand and delicately plucked one of the strings. The sound that echoed through the hall was pure and crystalline. Conversations ceased instantly. "My God," whispered Victoria, the smile vanishing from her face. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us tremendously as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Emily positioned herself correctly behind the harp, adjusting her posture exactly as she had observed for years through the windows of the conservatory where she worked cleaning bathrooms on weekends. Her hands moved across the strings with a grace that stunned everyone. And then she began to play. The melody that flowed from the harp was indescribably beautiful. It wasn't just technically perfect, it was emotional, moving, full of feeling. Emily played with her eyes closed, as if in a trance, and every note seemed to tell a story of suffering, hope, and dreams. The silence in the hall was absolute. Not even the sound of women's heels on the marble floor could be heard. Everyone was completely hypnotized by the music flowing from the young cleaner's hands. Richard felt a shiver run down his spine. There was something familiar about that melody, something that stirred deep, painful memories he had tried to bury years ago. Emily continued playing for a few more minutes, developing the melody with complex variations that demonstrated not only natural talent, but also advanced technical knowledge. When she finally stopped, the silence lingered for several seconds. It was Grace who broke it, clapping slowly. She had arrived at the mansion to pick up Emily, as they had planned to go to the doctor together, and ended up witnessing the entire scene from the entrance of the hall. "My daughter has always been an angel," said the 62-year-old woman, walking slowly to the center of the hall. "Ever since she was little, she listened to music and could reproduce any melody she heard." The 5 women in red dresses were in shock. Megan had dropped her glass on the floor, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. Victoria was pale as a ghost. Stephanie, Jennifer, and Catherine remained motionless, like statues. Richard, meanwhile, was visibly shaken. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to process what he had just witnessed. How did you learn to play like that?" he managed to ask, his voice quieter than usual. Emily wiped away a tear that had rolled down her face during the performance. "I've been cleaning the municipal conservatory on weekends for 5 years, sir. I always listened to the lessons through the walls, and—" She hesitated for a moment. "Whenever I had a spare moment, I'd watch through the window. I taught myself trying to imitate what I saw." "That's impossible," murmured Catherine. "No one learns the harp like that on their own." "Music has been in my daughter's heart since the day she was born," Grace interjected, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder affectionately. "When she was a child, she used to sing to the birds in our backyard, and they'd answer with their own songs. We always knew she had a special gift." Richard was silent for a long moment, clearly troubled. The melody Emily had played was Tears of Hope, an original composition by his own daughter, Hannah, who had passed away 5 years ago at the age of 16, a victim of a rare illness. It was a piece Hannah had created in the last months of her life, and it had only been played once, on the day of her farewell. Where did you learn that piece?" Richard asked, his voice choked. Emily looked confused. "I don't know its name, sir. It's a melody a girl used to play at the conservatory a few years ago. I always loved it, so I memorized it. She was a blonde girl, very sweet, who always smiled at me when she saw me cleaning outside." Richard felt his legs grow weak. Hannah had taken lessons at the municipal conservatory for 2 years before becoming too ill to continue. It was there that she had composed Tears of Hope. "Hannah," he whispered, almost inaudible. Richard's friends began to shift uncomfortably, clearly uneasy with the situation. What had started as a cruel joke had turned into something far more complex and emotional. "Well, Richard," said Megan, forcing a smile, "it was just a joke, right? Let's get back to the party." "A joke?" Grace's voice was firm and defiant. "My daughter just played the harp masterfully in front of all of you. You made a promise." "Oh, for heaven's sake," Victoria rolled her eyes. "You can't seriously think that—" "I recorded everything," interrupted a voice from the entrance of the hall. Everyone turned to see Rachel Wilson, 32 years old, Emily's cousin who worked as a freelance journalist. She held her phone in her hands, a determined look on her face. "Sorry to intrude, but I came to pick up my cousin to take Aunt Grace to the doctor, and I ended up witnessing this whole scene," said Rachel, walking to the center of the hall, "and I recorded every second." Richard's face turned red with anger. "You can't record inside my house." "Actually, I can. There's no law against recording a situation like this, especially when it involves a public promise made by you," replied Rachel, who knew her rights well. "And look, it already has over 2,000 views. I posted it live on social media." The 5 women in red dresses exchanged worried glances. They knew their social reputations could be affected if that video spread, showing them laughing and mocking a working woman. "Delete that video now," Richard ordered, stepping toward Rachel. "I'm not deleting anything," Rachel responded, taking a step back. "My cousin was publicly humiliated, but then she showed extraordinary talent, and you made a clear promise. If she played the harp, you'd give her your fortune." "It was a joke," Richard shouted. Anyone with half a brain would have known it was a joke. "Joke or not, it's filmed and online," said Rachel, holding up her phone. And judging by the flood of comments, people are taking it very seriously. Emily, who had remained silent throughout the argument, finally spoke. "I don't want your fortune, Mr. Richard. I just want you to treat me with respect. I work honestly, take care of my mother, and I deserve dignity as much as anyone here." "Well said, my dear," Grace supported, hugging Emily warmly. Richard was visibly shaken. The situation had spiraled out of his control, and he knew if the video went viral, it could have serious consequences for his public image and business. Fine," he said, trying to regain composure. "Let's handle this civilly. Emily, you really play beautifully, truly impressive." "I don't need empty praise, sir," Emily replied with dignity. "It's not empty. You have real talent," Richard insisted. "How about this? Instead of fulfilling a promise made as a joke, what if I give you a real opportunity?" Rachel raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "What kind of opportunity?" "I host charity events regularly. I always hire professional musicians to perform. If Emily can impress the guests at my next event, a month from now, I'll give her $100,000. Richard's friends sighed in relief. $100,000 was a lot of money for someone like Emily, but it was just a drop in the bucket for Richard. "And if she doesn't impress?" Rachel asked, still wary. "Then she gets nothing." "But at least you'll have had a chance to show your talent to influential people," replied Richard. Emily looked at her mother and cousin, trying to decide. It was a risky opportunity, but $100,000 would solve many of their financial problems. "I accept," she finally said, "but on one condition." "What?" "I want the promise in writing, signed by you and 2 witnesses, and I want my cousin's video to stay online so everyone knows how this opportunity came about." Richard clenched his fists. He had no choice. If he refused, it would look even worse. "Fine, but you'll have to perform in proper attire for the event. No cleaner's uniform." "We'll take care of that," said Hannah quickly. "Perfect. The event is on the 15th of next month at 8 in the evening, right here at the mansion. It's a charity dinner to raise funds for an orphanage," Richard explained, already thinking of ways to sabotage Emily's performance. After Emily, Grace, and Hannah left, Richard's 5 friends stayed behind, chatting with him in the hall. "Richard, are you crazy?" said Catherine. "You're really going to give $100,000 to that cleaner?" "Relax," Richard replied with a cruel smile. "She won't impress anyone. I'll make sure of that." "How?" asked Megan. "You'll see. Trust me." The next morning, Emily arrived at work at the cleaning company and was met by her supervisor, Robert Johnson, with a serious expression. "Emily, I need to talk to you," he said, closing the door of his small office. "Is something wrong, Mr. Johnson?" "I got a call this morning. The contract with Mr. Richard Thompson's mansion was cancelled. He claimed there were conduct issues with one of the employees." Emily felt the ground drop beneath her. "Conduct issues? But I didn't do anything wrong." "I know, Emily. You're one of the best employees I've ever had, but Mr. Richard was very clear. He doesn't want you working on his property anymore." "What does that mean for me?" Robert sighed deeply. "It means I'll have to let you go. His contract accounted for 40% of the company's revenue. Without it, I can't keep all the staff." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. Not only had she lost her job, but she knew Richard was trying to sabotage her chances at the charity event. "I'm sorry, Emily, truly sorry," Robert said, handing her a dismissal letter. "If you'd like, I can give you references for other companies." "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. You've always been very kind to me." When Emily got home that day, she found her mother, Grace, sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of bills. "How was work today, sweetheart?" Emily couldn't hold back her tears and told her mother everything. Grace hugged her tightly, trying to comfort her. "That wicked man is trying to break us," Grace said. "But we won't let him, my dear. God always finds a way." "Mum, your medicine is too expensive, and now, without a job." Emily glanced at the bills on the table. "Maybe I should forget about the event and focus on finding another job." "Don't even think about it," Grace said firmly. "You have a gift, Emily, a gift from God, and if that arrogant man is trying to stop you, it's because he knows you're capable of great things." "But Mom, what if I don't impress anyone at the event? We'll go through all this humiliation for nothing." "You will succeed, my dear. I'm sure of it. That same afternoon, Hannah arrived at Emily's house with news. "Cousin, you won't believe what I found out," she said, sitting down at the kitchen table. "What is it?" "Remember that blonde woman who was in Richard's group of friends yesterday? Victoria?" "I do. She reached out to me today, said she couldn't stop thinking about your performance. She wants to talk to you." Emily was suspicious. "Talk about what?" "I don't know, but she seemed sincere. Said your music deeply moved her. Where does she want to meet?" "At a cafe downtown tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon. She said she'll be alone." Emily hesitated. It could be a trap set by Richard. "I'll go with you," said Hannah. "If anything seems off, we'll leave." "All right, let's see what she wants." The next day, Emily and Hannah arrived at the cafe at the scheduled time. Victoria was already there, dressed simply, a far cry from the extravagant gowns she wore at the party. "Thank you for coming," Victoria said, gesturing for them to sit. "What do you want with us?" Hannah asked directly. Victoria sighed before answering. "I wanted to apologize for what happened yesterday. The way we treated you was awful, Emily." "Why are you apologizing now?" Emily asked. "Because I couldn't sleep last night. I kept thinking about your music, the way you played, and also—" She hesitated. "I also kept thinking about my own life." Victoria ordered a coffee and continued. "You know, I wasn't always wealthy. I was born and raised in a slum here in Los Angeles. My mother worked as a maid her whole life to support me. I managed to study, graduate in law, and ended up marrying a judge. But along the way, I think I forgot where I came from." Emily and Hannah exchanged surprised glances. "When I saw you play yesterday, Emily, I remembered my mother. She also had dreams she could never fulfill. She wanted to study music, you know, but she never got the chance." "Why are you telling me this?" Emily asked. "Because I want to help you. Richard is planning to sabotage your performance at the event. I overheard him talking to the other women after you left." Hannah leaned forward. "How does he plan to sabotage it?" "I don't know the details, but I know he's determined to humiliate you. And I also found out he's been spreading lies about you to other cleaning companies in the city." Emily's stomach dropped. "What kind of lies?" "That you steal, that you're disrespectful to employers, that you're unreliable. Basically, he's trying to keep you from getting work anywhere." "That's too cruel," Hannah murmured. "That's why I want to help," Victoria said. "I have a harp at home. It belonged to my grandmother. If you'd like, you can use it to practice for the event." Emily was silent for a moment, processing the offer. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because it's the right thing to do. And maybe it's a way for me to remember who I really am," Victoria replied sincerely. "I don't know, it could be a trap," Hannah said warily. "I understand your hesitation, but look." Victoria pulled a business card from her purse. "This is the number for my law office. I can help you legally too if Richard keeps harassing Emily." Emily looked at her cousin and then back at Victoria. "All right, I accept your help." "Great, I'll bring the harp to your house tomorrow. And, Emily—" Victoria gently touched the young woman's hand. "You truly have extraordinary talent. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." 2 days later, Victoria arrived at Emily's modest home, carrying a harp in a leather case. The house was in a working-class neighborhood of Los Angeles, with small homes and narrow streets. Nothing like the luxury of Richard's mansion. "Wow, what a cozy home," Victoria remarked, genuinely impressed by the simple but lovingly decorated Santos family home. Grace welcomed Victoria politely, though still with some suspicion. "You can leave the harp in the living room, my dear," said Grace. "Emily, come help the doctor." When they opened the case, Emily was amazed. The harp was beautiful, made of fine wood with well-preserved gold details. "This harp is over 50 years old," explained Victoria. "My grandmother brought it from Europe when she came to the United States. She used to play at high society events here in Los Angeles." "It's so beautiful," whispered Emily, gently touching the strings. "Can I share something special? When I was a child, my grandmother taught me a few songs on this harp, but I stopped playing after she passed. It's been so long since I last heard its sound," said Victoria wistfully. Emily began to play the same melody she had performed at Richard's mansion. The sound of the old harp was even richer and more melodious than Richard's golden harp. "My goodness," murmured Victoria, her eyes filling with tears. "It's exactly how my grandmother used to play." Grace, who was preparing coffee in the kitchen, stopped to listen. There was something magical in the way Emily played, something that touched the heart of anyone who heard it. "You know, Emily," said Victoria when the music stopped, "my grandmother used to say the harp is the instrument closest to the voice of angels, and hearing you play, I believe she was right." Emily smiled shyly. "Thank you so much for lending me your harp. I'll take care of it as if it were the most precious thing in the world." "I know you will. And Emily, there's one more thing I want to tell you." "What is it?" Victoria hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Richard isn't just a wealthy businessman. He has many enemies in the business world, people he's wronged over the years. If your performance at the event is truly impressive, you could gain much more than just $50,000. "What do you mean?" "Some of the event's guests are very influential people who dislike Richard. If they're impressed by you, they could open doors you've never imagined." Hannah, who had arrived during their conversation, joined in. "What kind of doors?" "Contracts to perform at other events, recording opportunities, maybe even a scholarship at a prestigious conservatory," explained Victoria. "That sounds too good to be true," said Emily skeptically. "It might seem that way, but it's the reality of the world we live in. Often it's about being in the right place at the right time with the right talent," Victoria replied. "But what if Richard finds out you're helping me?" Emily asked. "Leave that to me. He can't do anything against me. My husband is a judge, remember?" Over the following weeks, Emily practiced religiously on Victoria's harp. She developed new arrangements, memorized classical pieces, and even composed her own melodies. Grace was amazed by her daughter's progress. Despite her health issues, she made sure to sit in the living room every afternoon to listen to Emily play. "My dear, you're getting better every day," Grace said proudly. "When you play, it's like the whole house fills with light." Emily had tried finding work with other cleaning companies, but Richard had indeed spread lies about her. Every company she approached had already heard of her and wasn't interested in hiring her. The family's financial situation was becoming dire. Grace's medication cost nearly $500 a month, and without income, they were surviving only on their meager savings. "Maybe I should look for work in another field," Emily told Hannah one afternoon. "Don't give up now, cousin. The event is just a week away. If you impress the people there, everything will change." "And if I don't? What if Richard really does sabotage me?" "Then at least you'll have tried, and sometimes that's what matters." Victoria continued visiting Emily regularly, always bringing tips on how to behave at the event and information about the guests who would be present. "Michael Carter, owner of the Carter hotel chain, will be there. He loves classical music and always hires musicians for his events," Victoria explained. "And Dorothy Parker, who's a music producer, she's launched several artists who are now famous in the United States," she added. "Dr. Anthony Newman will also be there. He's the president of a foundation that grants scholarships to young talents. If he likes you, it could completely change your life." Emily absorbed all this information, but she also felt the pressure mounting. This wasn't just a musical performance, it was her only chance to change her life. 3 days before the event, something unexpected happened. Emily was practicing on the harp when she noticed something odd about the instrument's structure. There was a small opening at the base she hadn't noticed before. Curious, she inspected it further and discovered papers hidden inside the harp. They were handwritten sheet music, very old, with delicate and elegant handwriting. "Hannah!" Emily shouted. "Come see this!" Hannah rushed into the room and carefully examined the papers. "My goodness, these scores look ancient. And look here." She pointed to a signature in the corner of one page. It says, "Eleanor Hayes, 1943. "Eleanor Hayes? Where have I heard that name before?" Emily murmured. "Let's look it up online," Hannah suggested. After a few minutes of searching, they found surprising information. Eleanor Hayes had been a famous Spanish composer and harpist in the first half of the 20th century. Her compositions were considered works of art, and were worth fortunes in the musical art market. "This can't be," Emily whispered. "These scores could be worth a lot of money." "We have to tell Victoria," Hannah said. "After all, the harp is hers." That same evening, Victoria came to Emily's house. When she saw the sheet music, she was stunned. "I can't believe it. My grandmother never mentioned she had original compositions by Eleanor Hayes," she said, carefully examining the papers. "What does this mean?" Emily asked. "It means these scores could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Eleanor Hayes is considered one of the greatest harp composers of the 20th century. Collectors and museums pay fortunes for her original works." Emily fell silent, staring at the sheet music. For the first time in her life, she held something valuable in her hands, something that could solve all her financial problems. "Victoria," she finally said, "these scores are yours. The harp is yours, so the compositions are too. Emily, you don't have to—" "No, I insist. You helped me when I needed it most. It's only fair you keep them." Victoria looked at Emily with admiration. "You know, Emily, this just confirms what I already knew about you. You're a person of integrity, honest. Many people would have tried to keep these scores for themselves. It wouldn't have been right. That's exactly why I'll do this. We'll sell the scores and split the money 50-50. You deserve it after everything you've been through." "I can't accept that." "Yes, you can, and you will. That's my final decision." Hannah, who had stayed quiet during the entire conversation, finally spoke up. "You know what I think? I think you two should wait until after the event to decide about the scores. If Emily blows everyone away at the performance, maybe she won't even need the money from the sale." "Hannah's right," Victoria agreed. "Let's focus on the event first." The day before the benefit event, Emily was extremely nervous. She had practiced so much her fingers ached, but she still didn't feel ready enough. "Sweetheart, you need to relax," Grace said. "Anxiety can interfere with your performance." "Mom, what if I forget the music? What if I shake so much I can't play?" "That won't happen. You were born for this, Emily. I always knew it." Hannah arrived home that day carrying a large bag. "Cousin, I brought you a surprise," she said with a smile. "What is it?" "Open it and see." Emily opened the bag and found a long navy blue dress, simple yet elegant, paired with understated shoes and accessories. "Hannah, how did you afford this?" "I didn't buy it. I borrowed it from a friend who works at a formal wear store. She said you can keep the dress if you like it. It's too beautiful. Try it on." Emily went to change, and when she returned to the living room, both Grace and Hannah were moved. "My dear, you look stunning," said Grace, tears in her eyes. "You look like a princess," added Hannah. Emily looked at herself in the living room mirror and barely recognized herself. The dress accentuated her natural beauty and gave her an elegance she didn't know she possessed. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. On the morning of the event, Emily woke up with a terrible headache. Anxiety had consumed her overnight, and she had barely slept. "Mum, I don't think I can do this," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Of course you can, my dear. Get up, take a shower, eat something. You'll feel better." During breakfast, Hannah shared troubling news. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" "I found out Richard hired a professional harpist for tonight's event." "What do you mean?" "Apparently he wants there to be a comparison between you and a professional. He's telling the guests it'll be a sort of musical competition." Emily's stomach twisted. "That wasn't part of the original agreement." "I know, but he's changing the rules. Victoria called me this morning to warn me." "So now what? What do I do?" "You go out there and play the way you know how. It doesn't matter if there's one professional or 10. You have something none of them do." "What?" "Soul. Your music comes from the heart, Emily, and that makes all the difference." At 6 in the evening, Emily, Grace, and Hannah arrived at Richard's mansion. The place was transformed for the charity event, with sophisticated decorations and elegantly dressed guests. Emily carried Jennifer's harp in its case carefully. Her hands trembled slightly, but she tried to stay calm. Richard greeted them at the entrance with a fake smile. "Ah, Emily. So glad you came. Ready for the big show?" "We are," Hannah replied firmly. "Perfect. Just one small change to the program. You'll be performing in a duet, Emily and Maestro Edward Williams, the harpist for the Los Angeles Philharmonic." Emily paled. Edward Williams was famous across the country. "That wasn't part of the deal," Hannah protested. "Oh, but it was. I said she needed to impress the guests. And what better way to test her talent than by comparing her to a renowned professional?" Richard smirked maliciously. Grace gripped Emily's arm tightly. "My dear, you can do this. It doesn't matter who else is playing." Emily nodded, trying to find courage within herself. They were directed to a waiting room, where Emily tried to calm herself before the performance. Through the window, she could see the main hall filled with elegant people, all chatting and sipping French champagne. "There are so many people," she murmured. "And they're all going to fall in love with your music," Grace reassured her. At 8 o'clock, Richard stepped onto a small stage set up in the hall and began addressing the guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our annual charity event. Tonight we have a very special musical performance. We'll hear 2 harp presentations. First, the renowned conductor Edward Williams from the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and then a talented young woman we recently discovered." Emily heard the applause through the wall and felt her heart race. Conductor Edward Williams entered the hall carrying his professional harp and took his place on stage. He was a man in his 50s, with impressive stage presence and flawless technique. His performance was technically perfect. He played a complex classical piece, showcasing years of study and experience. The guests applauded politely when he finished. "Well done," said Richard, returning to the stage. "And now our second performance. Emily Wilson, a self-taught young woman who learned the harp in unconventional ways." Emily entered the hall carrying Victoria's harp. She could feel everyone's eyes on her, along with murmurs among the guests. "Is that really her from the video?" she heard someone whisper. "The cleaner who played the harp," said another. Emily positioned the harp on stage and adjusted her posture. When she looked at the audience, she saw Victoria sitting in the front row, smiling encouragingly. She also recognized some of the guests Victoria had mentioned: Michael Carter, Dorothy Parker, Dr. Anthony Newman. "You may begin whenever you're ready," said Richard, his tone barely hiding his expectation of seeing her fail. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, trying to focus. Then she began to play. She had chosen one of Eleanor Hayes's compositions she'd found on the harp, a melancholic, deeply emotional piece. From the first notes, something magical happened in the hall. Emily's music wasn't just technically good, it was moving, full of feeling and life experience. Every note seemed to tell a story of struggle, dreams, and hope. Conductor Edward Williams, who had been leaving the hall, stopped at the door to listen. His expression gradually shifted from indifference to admiration. Emily kept playing, losing herself completely in the music. She was no longer nervous, no longer thinking about the audience or the pressure. It was just her and the harp, creating a melody that came straight from her soul. When she played the final notes, the hall fell into absolute silence for several seconds. Then one person began to clap, then another, and another. Within moments, the entire hall was on its feet, applauding enthusiastically. Some had tears in their eyes. "My goodness," whispered Michael Carter to the person beside him. "That girl has an extraordinary gift." "I haven't heard a performance so moving in years," remarked Dorothy Parker. Dr. Anthony Newman was visibly emotional. He approached the stage as the applause died down. "Emily, isn't it?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "Where did you study music?" "I didn't, sir. I taught myself." "Taught yourself?" He looked incredulous. "That's extraordinary." Richard, who had been watching the entire scene, seemed visibly unsettled by the guests' reaction. His attempt to humiliate Emily had completely backfired. "Well done, Emily," he said, stepping onto the stage. "That was an interesting performance. Now, let's let the guests decide which performance was better." "Actually," interrupted conductor Edward Williams, who had returned to the hall, "I'd like to say something. Everyone turned to listen to the respected conductor. In 40 years of musical career, I've rarely heard anyone play with as much soul and feeling as this young woman. Her technique is remarkable for someone self-taught, but more importantly, she has the gift of true musicality. The applause started again, even more enthusiastically. "If I may," continued the conductor, "I'd like to invite Emily to play a duet with me." Emily was stunned. Playing with conductor Edward Williams was something she had never even dreamed of. I'd be honored," she managed to reply. They played a classical piece together, and the harmony between the two harps was simply magical. Emily kept up with the conductor perfectly, showing not just talent, but also remarkable musical adaptability. When they finished, the applause was thunderous. Several people approached the stage to congratulate Emily. Michael Carter was the first. "Emily, I'd like to hire you to play at my hotel chain's events. Would you be interested?" Before she could answer, Dorothy Parker stepped forward. "And I'd like to discuss a possible recording contract. Your music deserves to be heard by more people." Dr. Anthony Newman waited his turn. "Emily, our foundation offers full scholarships to young talents. Would you like to study at the National Conservatory of Music?" Emily was completely overwhelmed. So many opportunities coming at once. It was hard to process everything. Richard watched the scene unfold with an increasingly dark expression. His plan to humiliate Emily hadn't just failed, it had backfired spectacularly. "Excuse the interruption," he said, stepping back onto the stage, "but I believe we have an agreement to fulfill. Emily, you truly impressed the guests. Congratulations." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "Here's the promised $50,000. Emily took the envelope with trembling hands. It was more money than she had ever seen in her life. "Thank you, Mr. Richard." "Actually," Michael Carter interrupted, "I'd like to make a better offer. Emily, if you accept an exclusive contract to perform at my hotel chain's events, I can offer you $200,000 up front, plus a monthly salary of $20,000. The crowd murmured in awe. It was an extraordinary offer. "And I can offer $300,000 as an advance for a recording contract," added Dorothy Parker. "The scholarship I'm offering includes housing, meals, and a monthly stipend of $5,000 for 4 years," said Dr. Anthony Newman. Emily was in shock. In just one evening, she had gone from unemployed to having multiple life-changing opportunities. I need to talk to my family before making any decisions," she managed to say. Of course," said Michael Carter. "Here's my card. Call me tomorrow." Other guests also approached, offering job opportunities and expressing interest in hiring Emily for private events. Victoria, who had watched everything from the front row, approached Emily with tears in her eyes. "Emily, you were extraordinary. I'm so proud." "Thank you for everything, Victoria. Without your help, none of this would have been possible. You did it all yourself. I just lent you a harp." Grace and Hannah joined them, both crying with emotion. "My dear, you did it," said Grace, hugging Emily tightly. "Cousin, you were amazing. Everyone loved your performance," added Hannah. Richard watched from a distance, clearly displeased. His attempt to humiliate Emily had turned into the greatest triumph of her life. Later that night, after most guests had left, Emily was packing up Victoria's harp when she felt someone approach. It was Richard, but this time he seemed different, more humble, more thoughtful. "Emily, may I speak with you for a moment?" "Of course, Mr. Richard. I wanted to apologize for what I did at the party yesterday and for everything I did afterward to try and hurt you." Emily was surprised. It was the last thing I expected to hear. "Why did you change your mind?" Richard sighed deeply before answering. "When you played that song at the party the other day, the one you said you learned by listening to a girl at the conservatory." "Yes?" "That girl was my daughter, Hannah. She passed away 5 years ago." Emily felt a tightness in her chest. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Thompson." Hannah was always very sick. She spent the last 2 years of her life in and out of hospitals. The only thing that made her smile were her harp lessons at the conservatory. Richard paused for a moment, clearly emotional. "She used to come home and talk about a young woman who worked cleaning the conservatory, who always smiled at her and sometimes hummed while she worked. Hannah said that woman had the most beautiful voice she'd ever heard. Emily began to remember. There had been a blonde girl, always very pale, who attended the conservatory a few years ago. She always seemed sad but smiled when Emily greeted her. "You were that woman who hummed," Richard continued, "and the song Hannah composed on Tears of Hope was inspired by a melody she heard you singing." "I didn't know she had composed a song based on me," Emily whispered. "Hannah always said that when she grew up she wanted to be like you, strong, hard-working, always smiling despite the hardships. She admired you, Emily. She was such a sweet girl. I always felt there was something special about her. When she passed, I became very bitter. I started treating people poorly, especially those who reminded me of her. I think that's why I was so cruel to you." Emily didn't know what to say, but today, hearing you play her song, it was like she was here again. And I realized I was dishonoring my own daughter's memory with my behavior. "Mr. Thompson, no, let me finish. I want to make peace with you, Emily. And more than that, I want to honor Hannah's memory by helping people like you." "What do you mean?" "I want to turn this mansion into a music study center, a place where young talents like you can study for free. And I'd like you to be the artistic director." Emily was stunned. It was a completely unexpected offer. "I don't know if I'm qualified to." "You're more qualified than anyone I know. You have talent, dedication, and most importantly, you have the right heart." Victoria, who had overheard part of the conversation, stepped closer. "Emily, I think you should accept. It would be a wonderful way to use your talent to help others." "But what about the other offers? The contracts, the record label, the scholarship?" "You can do it all," Richard said. "The center would only operate a few days a week. You'd have time for your other commitments." Emily looked at her mother and cousin, seeking guidance. "What do you think?" "I think you should follow your heart, my dear," said Grace. "And your heart is telling you to help others who've been through what you've been through," added Hannah. Emily was silent for a moment, thinking of all the possibilities opening before her. "All right, Mr. Thompson, I accept your offer, but on one condition." "What?" "I want the center to be called the Hannah Thompson Music Institute." Richard smiled for the first time in a long while, a genuine and emotional smile. "My daughter would be so proud." 6 months later, the Hannah Thompson Music Institute was in full swing. Richard's mansion had been transformed into classrooms, practice studios, and even a small auditorium for performances. Emily had accepted the contract with Michael Carter's hotel chain, but only for special events. She had also recorded an album with Dorothy Parker, which became a bestseller, especially among audiences who appreciated classical music. Dr. Anthony Newman's scholarship was crucial in allowing her to finally study formally, refining her technique and musical knowledge. But Emily's greatest satisfaction came from her work at the Institute. She taught harp to children and teens from underprivileged communities, many of whom had never been exposed to classical music before. "Miss Emily, can I play that beautiful piece you taught us last week?" asked Julia, a 12-year-old girl who had quickly stood out in class. "Of course, Julia, but remember to keep the correct posture." Emily watched with pride as Julia played. The girl had arrived at the Institute just 3 months ago, shy and unsure, and now she could already perform intermediate pieces. Richard often visited the classes, always moved to see how his Beverly Hills mansion had transformed into a place full of life and music. He had completely shed his arrogant demeanor, becoming a humbler and more generous person. "Emily," he said one afternoon after class, "I have a proposal for you." "What is it this time?" She laughed. "How about we expand the Institute? I have other properties that could be turned into music centers. We could create a network of free schools across the city." "That would be wonderful, but it'll take a lot of work and resources." "I have the money. You have the talent and dedication. Together we can make a difference in so many children's lives." Emily smiled. A year ago she was just a cleaner struggling to survive. Now she was a respected musician, teacher, and director of an institute that was changing lives. "You know, Mr. Richard, when I was little, my mother always said God had special plans for me. Back then I thought she was just trying to comfort me through our hardships. And now I see she was right. But the plans were even bigger than I imagined. Grace, whose health had improved significantly after the family's financial situation stabilized, loved visiting the institute. She had become a sort of grandmother to all the children studying there. "My daughter," she said to Emily, as they watched a group lesson where 20 children played harp together, "you fulfilled the dream I never could." "What dream, Mom?" "Using music to do good, showing these children they have worth, that they can dream big. We fulfilled that dream together, Mom. Without your support and faith in me, none of this would have been possible." Victoria also became a constant presence at the institute. She had separated from her judge husband, realizing she no longer had to live a life that didn't make her happy. Now she worked as a volunteer lawyer for the institute, helping underprivileged families with legal matters. "You know, Emily," Victoria said one afternoon, "you didn't just change your own life. You changed mine too." "How so?" "You reminded me of who I really am. You brought me back to my values, my roots. I'm a better person because of you." "You were always a good person, Victoria. You just lost your way for a while. And you helped me find it again." Hannah had landed a job at a major newspaper, where she wrote articles about social projects and community initiatives. She made sure to closely follow the institute's growth, documenting its impact on the community. "Cousin," she said to Emily during one of the institute's public performances, "you've become an inspiration to so many. I get emails every week from people who read my articles and want to start similar projects in their cities." "That's amazing. It means the idea is spreading." "Exactly. Well, you planted a seed that's sprouting in many places." Conductor Edward Williams also became a regular collaborator at the institute. He came once a month to give masterclasses and mentor the advanced students. "Emily," he said after one of his sessions, "your students have something many students at expensive conservatories don't." "What's that?" "A genuine passion for music. They're not here out of obligation or parental pressure. They're here because they truly love what they do." "That's true, and it makes all the difference in their learning. You're raising a generation of musicians who will revolutionize classical music in the United States, musicians who come from the people and play for the people." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. A year and a half after Emily's first performance at Richard's mansion, the Hannah Thompson Music Institute was hosting its first major public concert. The event would take place at the Walt Disney Concert Hall, and all the Institute's students would participate. Emily was backstage helping the children prepare for their performance. She wore an elegant but simple dress, her hair tied in a discreet bun. "Professor, I'm nervous," said Megan, a 10-year-old girl who would perform a harp solo. "It's normal to feel nervous, Megan. But remember, you're playing for people who want to hear beautiful music. Close your eyes and play from the heart." "Like you always teach us?" "Exactly." The hall was packed. Besides the students' families, there were many prominent figures from Los Angeles society, journalists and representatives from other music institutions. Richard, who now served as the Institute's board president, opened the event. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said on stage, "2 years ago I was a very different man from who I am today. I was arrogant, insensitive, and believed a person's worth was measured only by their wealth." The audience listened intently. It took a young cleaner, with extraordinary talent and an even more extraordinary heart, to show me how wrong I was. Emily Wilson didn't just change my life, she's changing the lives of hundreds of children and young people through music. He paused, clearly moved. This institute exists to honor my daughter Hannah's memory, but also to celebrate music's transformative power. Tonight, you'll hear not just beautiful music, but proof that talent and dedication can overcome any social or economic obstacle. The applause was warm and prolonged. The performance began with an ensemble of 20 harps playing in harmony. The sound was majestic, filling the historic hall completely. The children, who came from humble backgrounds, played with precision and emotion that impressed even the most demanding music critics. Megan performed her solo flawlessly, playing a simplified arrangement of Hannah's Tears of Hope. When she finished, She received a standing ovation. Other students performed with different instruments. The institute had expanded to include violin, cello, and piano. Each performance showcased not just technical skill, but the genuine love for music Emily had instilled in her students. The highlight of the evening came when Emily took the stage with her harp, the same antique harp from Victoria that had changed her life. She would perform the complete version of Tears of Hope, with arrangements she had developed herself. This piece, she told the audience, was composed by a very special girl who left us too soon, but left behind a legacy of beauty and hope. Hannah Thompson dreamed of a world where music could unite people from all walks of life. Today we are making this dream come true. Emily began to play, and from the very first notes, the concert hall fell into absolute silence. The music seemed to float through the rows of seats, touching the heart of every person present. Grace, who was in the front row, wept silently with pride. Hannah held her hand, equally moved. Victoria, seated nearby, had a radiant smile on her face. Richard watched from the side of the stage, thinking of his daughter and how happy she would be to see her music played with such love and respect. When Emily finished, the silence lasted a few seconds that felt like an eternity. Then one person stood up and began to clap, then another, and another. Within moments, the entire Walt Disney Concert Hall was on its feet, applauding wildly. Many people were crying, moved by the beauty and emotion of the performance. Emily bowed and gestured for all the students from the institute to join her on stage. Over 50 children and young people gathered around her, forming a striking visual chorus. "These are the true stars of tonight," Emily said into the microphone. "Each of them proves that it doesn't matter where you come from, but where you're going. Music teaches us that we are all capable of creating beauty in the world." The applause started again, even more enthusiastically. After the performance, Emily was approached by dozens of people, directors of conservatories, music producers, representatives of foundations, all eager to learn more about the Institute's work. "Emily," said Dr. Anthony Newman, stepping closer, "today you proved that our investment in your talent was the best decision we ever made. But more than that, you proved that quality education can transform entire communities." "Thank you, Dr. Anthony. None of this would be possible without your support. And nothing would be possible without your dedication and vision. You've created something truly unique here." Michael Carter also approached her. "Emily, I'd like to propose a partnership between my hotel chain and the Institute. How about we organize regular performances by your students at our venues? It would give visibility to your work while offering our guests high-quality culture." "I'd love to discuss that possibility," Dorothy Parker was beaming. "Emily, your album is still selling incredibly well. People are more and more interested in your story and your music. How about recording a second album, this time featuring some compositions by your students?" It would be wonderful to give them that opportunity. But the conversation that touched Emily the most was with an elderly woman who approached her timidly. "Excuse me, are you Emily Wilson?" "Yes, ma'am." "My name is Betty Anderson. I'm a retired teacher and volunteer in a neighborhood on the south side. After seeing your performance tonight, I was wondering if it might be possible to bring the Institute's project to our community." Emily was moved. "Of course. We'd love to expand our work. Let's talk about how we can help. The children in our community desperately need opportunities like this. Many of them have never been exposed to classical music. Everyone deserves access to the beauty of music, Mrs. Anderson. We'll make it happen." That night, when Emily finally returned home, she sat in the room where it had all begun, where she had practiced tirelessly on Victoria's harp, where she had discovered Eleanor Hayes's sheet music, where she had made the decision to accept Richard's challenge. Grace joined her on the sofa. "So, my dear, how do you feel?" "Tired but fulfilled. You know, Mum, sometimes it all feels like a dream." "It's not a dream, Emily. It's the result of your hard work, your faith, and your kindness, and your unconditional support. Without you, I never would have made it this far. You got here on your own merit. I just believed in what was always inside you." Hannah arrived shortly after, still euphoric about the event's success. Cousin, have you seen the buzz on social media? The video of your performance already has over 1 million views. Really? And the comments are all positive. People are sharing their stories, saying how your music moved them. Some are even organizing similar events in their cities. Emily smiled. It was gratifying to know her story was inspiring others. There's something I want to tell you, said Hannah, sitting beside them. What is it? I received an offer to write a book about your story. A major publisher is interested. A book about me? Emily seemed surprised. About you, about the Institute, about how one person can transform not just their own life, but the lives of so many others. It's a story that needs to be told. I don't know if I'm interesting enough for a whole book. Emily Wilson, Grace said firmly, you're living proof that it doesn't matter where you're born or the conditions you grow up in. What matters is what you do with the opportunities that come your way. And you did something extraordinary with yours, Hannah added. A few weeks later, Victoria approached Emily with an unexpected proposal. Remember the sheet music by Eleanor Hayes we found in my harp? Of course, did you manage to sell it? Actually, I didn't. I decided to donate it to a museum, but with one condition. What? That it be permanently displayed with a plaque explaining how it was discovered and mentioning the Hannah Thompson Music Institute. Emily was touched by the gesture. Victoria, you didn't have to. I wanted to. That sheet music brought our lives together in a special way. It's only right that it continues to unite people through music. Thank you. This means so much to me. And there's more. Remember when I told you my grandmother played harp in Los Angeles high society? I do. I found out she gave private lessons to elite girls, but also taught poor children for free in her home. I think you're continuing a legacy I didn't even know existed in my family. What a beautiful coincidence. Or maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe it's fate. 2 years after the first event at Richard's mansion, Emily was preparing for a very special moment. She had been invited to perform at the inauguration of a new public conservatory in Los Angeles, the city's largest classical music democratization project ever. The event would be broadcast live nationwide, and Emily would play accompanied by a full orchestra. Nervous? Richard asked, finding her backstage. A little. This is the biggest performance of my life. You've proven time and again you can handle any challenge. Today won't be any different. How do you feel, Mr. Richard, seeing this whole project come to life? Proud. Proud of you, the Institute, and especially my daughter, Hannah. I'm sure she's looking down and smiling. She must be so happy seeing how your music has touched so many lives. And it keeps touching them. Did you know Tears of Hope has become one of the most played pieces by harp students in the United States? Really? Yes. Teachers across the country are including it in their curriculums. Hannah's composition has become a symbol of hope and perseverance. Emily was moved. It was heartwarming to know the girl's music still inspired others. The performance was an absolute success. Emily played a repertoire that included traditional classics, Hannah's composition, and even an original piece she had written, inspired by her experiences at the Institute. The television broadcast reached an audience of over 10 million people, and in the weeks that followed, Emily received thousands of messages from across the United States, all inspired by her story. The most touching was a letter that arrived by mail, written by a 12-year-old girl from a small rural town. Dear Emily, my name is Anna, and I live in a town with no music school or anything like that. But after seeing you on TV, I asked my mom to get me a used guitar. I'm teaching myself, just like you learned the harp. One day, I want to start a music school in my town, just like you did. Thank you for showing me it's possible to dream big. Emily cried as she read the letter. This was exactly the kind of impact she had dreamed of having. Mom, she said to Grace, I think I finally understand my purpose in life. What is it, my dear? It's not just about playing beautiful music. It's about showing others that they can play beautiful music too. It's about planting seeds of hope and watching them grow. I always knew you had this special calling, and now I have the means to truly fulfill it. 3 years later, the Hannah Thompson Music Institute network had expanded to 12 cities across the United States. Each branch followed the original model. free, high-quality music education for children and young people from underprivileged communities. Emily traveled constantly, overseeing the schools, training teachers, and performing at fundraising events. During one of these trips, she visited the town where Anna, the girl who had written the letter, lived. To her surprise, Anna had actually started a community music project. "Emily!" Anna shouted, running to hug her when she arrived at the small square where guitar lessons were held. "I can't believe you came. I couldn't miss meeting the girl who's making a difference in her community." "Look," Anna said proudly, "we already have 15 students, and the church priest lets us use the hall when it rains." Emily was moved, seeing the small group of children and teenagers playing guitar with the same passion she saw in her Los Angeles students. "Anna, would you like to officially join our network?" "What do you mean?" "We can make your project a formal branch of the Hannah Thompson Music Institute. That means funding, better instruments, teaching materials, and training for you to become a certified instructor." Anna began to cry. "Is this real? Am I dreaming?" "It's real. You've proven your dedication and love for music. Now we want to give you the tools to do even more." That night, Emily called Richard to tell him about Anna. "This is incredible, Emily. More proof that our work is truly making a difference. You know what moves me the most? Seeing that we don't have to be physically present to inspire change. People are starting their own projects. That's the real power of music. It spreads, it multiplies, it touches hearts we never imagined. Richard, I want to thank you again for everything, for giving me that opportunity, even if your intentions were different at first. Emily, I'm the one who should thank you. You saved my soul. You showed me how to live a life with purpose. We saved each other, really." 5 years after the event that changed everything, Emily was preparing for her wedding. She had met Lucas Foster, a young conductor who worked with community orchestras during a music festival where they both performed. "Nervous?" Grace asked, helping Emily get dressed. "A little, but it's the good kind. Lucas is a good man, and you have so much in common." "It's true. He understands my passion for music and social work, and he loves you exactly as you are." The wedding would be simple, held at the community church where Emily had grown up. She insisted on making it an accessible celebration for all her students and friends. Victoria was her matron of honor, and Hannah would be responsible for photographing the event. Richard had offered his mansion for the reception, but Emily preferred the neighborhood community hall. "This is where I feel at home," she explained. Lucas understood her choice perfectly. He too came from humble beginnings and valued simplicity. The ceremony was moving. Many students from the institute sang during the service, and the music accompanying Emily's entrance was Tears of Hope, performed by a group of her earliest students. At the reception, Emily was surprised with a special performance. All the directors of the Hannah Thompson Music Institute, branches across the country, had gathered to play a song they had composed in her honor. "This song is called Seeds of Hope," explained Anna, now the director of the rural branch. "It's our way of thanking you for everything you've planted in our lives." Emily cried throughout the performance. Seeing those she had helped shape now creating their own art was the greatest fulfillment of her life. Lucas held her hand during the song. "Proud of you," he whispered. "Proud of us, of everything we've built together, and everything we'll still build." After the wedding, Emily and Lucas moved into a simple but comfortable home in the same neighborhood where she had grown up. They made a point of staying connected to their roots. The house had a small studio where Emily continued composing and giving private lessons to select students. Lucas also used the space to rehearse with his musical groups. "You know," Emily said to Lucas one evening, "sometimes I think about how my life changed completely in such a short time. It changed because you were ready for it, and because you knew how to seize opportunities, but mostly because I had people by my side who believed in me. And now you're that person for hundreds of children and young people. It's a big responsibility. But you were born for this, Emily." 2 years after the wedding, Emily and Lucas welcomed their first daughter, whom they named Hannah, after the girl who had inspired the entire story. Grace, now a grandmother, was radiant as she cared for her little granddaughter. "She has a musician's fingers," she'd often say, watching the baby's tiny hands. "Mum, she's still too little to know that," Emily laughed. "I can tell. This girl will be special, just like her mother." Richard had become an adoptive grandfather to little Hannah. He visited her regularly, always bringing musical gifts, rattles with harmonious sounds, mobiles with gentle melodies, small toy instruments. "She'll grow up surrounded by music," he said, emotional. Just as my original Hannah would have wanted. The Hannah Thompson Music Institute continued to grow. There were now 25 branches across the United States, serving over 3,000 children and young people. Some of the earliest students had turned professional and launched their own musical projects. Emily had become a national figure in inclusive music education. She was invited to speak at universities, contributed to public cultural policies, and had written 2 books about her teaching methodology. But she never forgot her roots. She still visited every institute branch regularly, maintaining direct contact with students and teachers. During one of these visits, she reunited with Megan, the girl who had played the solo at the institute's first concert. Now 16, Megan had become one of the country's finest young harpists. "Professor Emily," Megan said, "I want to tell you something. I'm listening. I just got accepted into university to study conducting. I want to become a conductor and create an orchestra with musicians who all come from social projects." Emily was moved. "Megan, that's wonderful. You're going to fulfill a beautiful dream. And it all started here, with your lessons. You planted that seed when I was still a child. You're the one who watered that seed with your dedication and talent. I promise I'll honor everything I've learned here. You already are, just by becoming the incredible person you are today." 8 years after the event that changed everything, Emily received a call that deeply moved her. It was the Minister of Culture, inviting her to receive a national honor for her contribution to the democratization of music in the United States. "Emily Wilson," said the minister, "your projects have become a model for public policies across the country. It's only right that you be officially recognized." "I'm deeply honored, Mr. Minister." The ceremony will be held at the White House, with the president in attendance. Emily could hardly believe it. From cleaner to national honoree, it was a journey she hadn't even imagined in her wildest dreams. The ceremony was emotional. Emily was accompanied by her family: Lucas, little Hannah, now 3 years old, Grace, cousin Rachel, and Victoria. Richard was also there, proud as if he were her father. "It's an honor to present this award to Emily Wilson," said the president, "a woman who proved that talent knows no social class, and that a determined person can transform not only their own life, but the lives of thousands of others." Emily accepted the medal with tears in her eyes, thinking of the entire journey that had brought her there. "I dedicate this honor," she said into the microphone, "to all the children and young people who believe in their dreams, even when the world seems to tell them they're impossible. And I dedicate it especially to Hannah Thompson, whose music continues to echo and inspire people across the United States." After the ceremony, Emily was approached by several journalists. They all wanted to know the secret to her project's success. "There's no secret," she replied. "There's love. When you teach with love, when you truly believe in each person's potential, the music flows naturally." "And what's your next project?" asked one reporter. "We're planning to take the Institute to other countries in Latin America. Music has no borders, and we believe our model can work anywhere there are dreams to be fulfilled." "Do you still play the harp professionally?" "Yes, but now my greatest performance is watching my students play. There's no more rewarding stage than that." That evening, back in Los Angeles, Emily was at home with her family. Lucas strummed the guitar softly while little Hannah played on the floor. Grace knitted in the armchair, and Emily worked on sheet music for a new composition. "Mom," little Hannah suddenly said, "when I grow up, can I play the harp like you?" Emily smiled and lifted her daughter into her arms. "You can play any instrument you want, my princess, or you can choose not to play at all. What matters is that you're happy." "But I want to play the harp, to help other kids like you do." Emily exchanged an emotional glance with Lucas. "If that's what you truly want, my love, I'll teach you everything I know." "And I'll teach you too," Grace said from the armchair. After all, Grandma wants to be part of her granddaughter's musical education too. Everyone laughed, and Emily felt completely fulfilled. Her life had found its purpose. Her family was united, and the legacy she was building would continue through the next generations. 10 years after the event that changed everything, Emily was preparing for a special milestone, the first national festival of the Hannah Thompson Music Institutes. The event would bring together students from all locations across the country for 3 days of performances, workshops, and celebration. The festival would be held at the Los Angeles Cultural Center, and an audience of over 10,000 people was expected. "Nervous?" asked Lucas, finding Emily reviewing the final organizational details. "Excited. It's the first time we're bringing everyone together. It's going to be magical." "I hope so. I want it to be a celebration of everything we've built together." "And it will be. You'll see." The festival was even more beautiful than Emily had imagined. Seeing hundreds of children and young people from all over the United States playing together, sharing their experiences, and forming new friendships was deeply moving. The highlight came on the final day, when all the participants performed a special arrangement of Tears of Hope together, adapted for hundreds of different instruments. Richard, now with completely white hair but eyes shining with joy, sat in the front row, openly weeping. "Hannah would be so proud," he whispered to Emily after the performance. "She is proud," Emily replied. "I'm sure of it." During the festival, Emily reunited with many of her earliest students, now adults and established professionals. Some had become musicians, others teachers, and some had chosen different careers, but all carried with them the love for music they had discovered at the Institute. "Professor," said Julia, now 22 and a graduate in music education, "I wanted to tell you I opened a music school in my hometown." "That's wonderful, Julia. And we already have 50 students. I'm using everything I learned from you." "You're planting your own seeds now." "Exactly. The cycle continues." It was during the festival that Emily made an important decision. She announced the creation of the Hannah Thompson Foundation, an organization that would not only sustain the existing institutes, but also support independent music projects across the country. "We want to support anyone who dreams of bringing music to their community," she explained from the festival's main stage. "It doesn't matter if it's a big or small project. What matters is the passion and dedication." The audience applauded enthusiastically. It was another step in the democratization of music in the United States. Anna, who now coordinated music projects in several small towns, approached Emily after the announcement. "Emily, you know you're creating a movement that goes far beyond music, right?" "How so?" "You're teaching people to believe in themselves. You're showing that it's possible to change realities through hard work and dedication. That's much bigger than any music project." "Maybe it is. But it all started with music. And music will always be at the heart of it. But the impact goes far beyond the notes we play." On the festival's final day, Emily gave a special solo performance. She played an original composition she had created just for the occasion, called Echoes of Hope. The music told her entire journey through its melodies, from the difficult days as a cleaner, through the challenge at Richard's mansion, to the creation of the institutes and everything that followed. When she finished, the silence was absolute for several seconds. Then a 6-year-old child in the front row began to clap. That single clap echoed through the auditorium until, gradually, thousands joined in. The ovation lasted over 10 minutes. Emily remained on stage, trying to absorb the moment, the culmination of a decade of work. After the festival, life continued with new projects and challenges. Little Hannah, now 6 years old, had indeed shown musical talent and had begun harp lessons with her mother. "Mom," she said one afternoon, "why do you always look sad when you play that song by Aunt Hannah?" Emily stopped playing and looked at her daughter. "I'm not sad, sweetheart, I'm moved." "What's the difference?" "Sadness is when you lose something and can't find it again. Emotion is when you find beauty in something that touches your heart. And Aunt Hannah's song touches your heart? Very much, because it reminds me how a special person can keep making a difference in people's lives, even after they're gone. I'll compose a song for you too, Mom." Emily smiled and hugged her daughter. It'll be the most beautiful song in the world. 15 years after the event that changed everything, Emily received an international call that surprised her. It was a representative from UNESCO, inviting her to present the model of the Hannah Thompson Music Institutes as an example of best practices in music education to representatives from various countries. "Mrs. Wilson," the representative said, "your work has become a global reference for social inclusion through art. We'd like you to share your experience with educators from around the world. It would be an honor." The event will be in Paris, at UNESCO headquarters. Emily could hardly believe it. Her story, which had begun in a mansion in Los Angeles, would now be shared with representatives from across the globe. The presentation in Paris was a success. Emily showed videos of the institutes, shared her personal story, and explained the methodology she had developed over the years. "The secret," she told the international audience, "isn't in material resources or infrastructure. It's in the belief that every person has musical potential and in the genuine love for what we do." Representatives from various countries expressed interest in implementing similar projects in their nations. Emily committed to supporting these initiatives through the Hannah Thompson Foundation. "Now we're truly international," Lucas said when she told him about the proposals they'd received. "It's amazing to think that a melody played in a Los Angeles mansion can inspire projects in Africa, Asia, Europe. Music really has no borders." Back in the United States, Emily continued playing, teaching, and expanding the Foundation's projects. There were now over 50 institute locations across the country, with pilot programs being developed in other nations. Little Hannah, now 10 years old, had become a prodigy harpist. But Emily made sure she had a normal childhood and wasn't pressured into a music career if she didn't want it. "Mom," young Hannah said one afternoon, "can I play at the next institute concert?" "Are you sure you want to? You don't feel pressured?" "I'm sure. I want to help other kids feel inspired just like you do." Emily was moved. Her daughter was developing the same passion for helping others through music. "Then let's prepare a special performance for you." Grace, now 75 but still very active, loved watching her granddaughter's progress. "That girl has her mother's heart," she always said, "talented, but above all kind." "It's true, Mom. She's growing up with the right values, because she has parents who lead by example." 20 years after the event that changed everything, Emily was preparing for another special milestone, the release of her autobiography. The book, titled Strings of Destiny: From Cleaner to Musician, told her entire story in detail. The launch would take place in the auditorium of the first Hannah Thompson Music Institute, the former mansion of Richard Thompson, now completely transformed. "Nervous about the launch?" asked Victoria, who remained one of Emily's closest friends. "A little. It's strange to think my life will be laid out in a book. It's a life worth telling. It will inspire many people." "I hope so." The launch was emotional. The auditorium was packed with family, friends, former and current students, and musical personalities. Richard, now 65, introduced Emily. 20 years ago," he said, "I was a bitter and arrogant man. I thought I was humiliating a cleaner, but in truth I was about to meet the person who would change my life forever. Emily Wilson taught me that true wealth isn't in what we possess, but in the good we do for others." Emily took the stage, moved. "This book," she said, "isn't just my story. It's the story of everyone who believed in their dreams despite the hardships. It's the story of music as a transformative force. And above all, it's the story of love, the love we receive and the love we give." She read an excerpt from the book about the day she first played in Richard's mansion. "When my hands touched the strings of that golden harp, I didn't know I was playing the strings of my own destiny. Every note that echoed through that hall opened a door to a future I'd never dared to imagine." The audience listened in respectful silence, many with tears in their eyes. After the launch, Emily was approached by a young journalist. "Ms. Wilson, what advice would you give to people going through tough times who think they have no talent?" Emily thought for a moment before answering. "I'd say everyone has some talent. Sometimes it's musical, sometimes it's cooking, caring for plants, fixing things, listening to people. The important thing is to discover your gift and use it to do good. And above all, never give up on your dreams, no matter how impossible they seem. But what if circumstances are too difficult? Circumstances may determine our starting point, but not our destination. There's always something we can do to improve our situation, even if it's just one small step at a time. Emily's autobiography became a national bestseller. Thousands wrote to her, sharing how her story had inspired them to pursue their own dreams. One letter that touched her deeply was from a 50-year-old woman who had returned to school after reading the book. "Dear Emily, I always dreamed of being a teacher, but life's circumstances led me to work in other fields. After reading your story, I realized it's never too late to start over. At 50, I went back to university. Thank you for showing me that life can change course at any age." Emily treasured all these letters. They were proof her story was truly making a difference. Hannah, her daughter, now 15, had grown into an exceptional musician and a socially engaged young woman. She'd started a music group at school that performed in nursing homes and hospitals. "Mom," she said one afternoon, "I want to study music education in college." "Are you sure? You can choose any career you want." "I'm sure. I want to continue the work you started, but with my own ideas." "And what are your ideas?" "I want to focus specifically on the elderly. I believe music can do so much for seniors, but there are few programs for them." Emily felt proud. Her daughter was developing her own vision for using music to help others. "That's a beautiful idea, Hannah, and much needed. Can I start a pilot project at the Institute?" "Of course. Let's talk to the team and see how we can make it happen." 25 years after the event that changed everything, Emily was preparing to retire from active leadership of the institutes. She had chosen Anna, her first student who became a teacher, to take over as president of the Hannah Thompson Foundation. "Are you sure about this decision?" Anna asked. "It's a huge responsibility." "I'm certain. You have all the competence and, most importantly, the right heart." "And what about you? What will you do?" "I'll keep playing, composing, giving some special lessons, but mostly I'll enjoy my family and maybe write another book." "About what?" "About the future. About where music can take us from here." The handover ceremony was emotional. Representatives from all the Institute's branches were present, along with authorities and musical personalities. "It is with great pride," said Emily, "that I pass the leadership of the Hannah Thompson Foundation to Anna Wilson Smith, a woman who started as my student and became an inspiring leader. I know the foundation is in excellent hands." Anna took the microphone, visibly moved. "Emily Wilson isn't just my teacher or my predecessor. She's my inspiration and my second mother. I promise to honor all the work she built and continue expanding music's reach as a tool for social change." After the ceremony, Emily felt free and fulfilled. She had built something lasting that would continue impacting lives even without her direct presence. Lucas, who had become a respected conductor, was also scaling back his activities so they could spend more time together. "So now," he asked, "what are the plans for this new chapter?" "I want to travel across the United States to see the projects our work has inspired. I want to witness firsthand what we planted and how it's growing. And I want to go with you." "That would be perfect." Hannah, their daughter, had graduated in music education and successfully implemented her project with the elderly. The Melodies of Memory program was running in 10 cities, showing impressive results in seniors' well-being. "Mom," she said, "I want to thank you for teaching me that music isn't just entertainment. It's healing, connection, love. You learned that on your own, by observing and living. I just gave you the tools. And the example. Whenever I doubted if I was on the right path, I remembered how you transformed your life and so many others through music." Grace, now 80, remained the loving matriarch of the family. Her health was good, and she adored telling family stories to her great-grandchildren. Lucas and Emily had 2 more children in the following years. "Grandma," said 5-year-old Peter, the youngest grandchild, "tell the story again about when Mommy played the harp for the rich man." "I've told that story 1,000 times, my dear, but I love it. and there are always new details." Grace laughed and began the story again, with the same enthusiasm as the first time. Emily watched these scenes with gratitude. Her story had become part of the family tradition, passed down to the next generations. Richard, now a devoted grandfather to Emily's adopted children, still visited regularly. He had become a completely transformed man, dedicating his life to social causes. "Emily," he said during one visit, "sometimes I think about what my life would have been if I hadn't made that foolish challenge 25 years ago. Probably the same empty life as before. It's terrifying to think about. How someone can live so long without purpose. But you found yours, and you still have many years to make a difference. Thanks to you. Thanks to music, it connects hearts that seemed lost." At 60, Emily published her second book, The Future of Music: How Art Can Save the World. The book explored music's potential as a tool for global social transformation. The launch was global, and Emily traveled to several countries presenting her ideas. In every place she visited, she found projects inspired by the methodology of the Hannah Thompson Institutes. "It's incredible," she said to Lucas during one of these trips, "to see how an idea can spread and adapt to completely different cultures. Music truly is a universal language. And so is love. Deep down, all the projects we've seen have that in common. They're made with love." In one of the countries they visited, Emily met Sarah, a young African woman who had created a music school in her village using instruments made from recycled materials. "Miss Emily," Sarah said, "your story reached us through the internet. It inspired us to believe we could create something beautiful even without resources. And you've created something far more beautiful than many wealthy schools I know." "How so?" "Because you created it with your hearts, and that shows in the music the children make here." Emily watched a performance by the village children and was deeply moved. Even with simple instruments, they played with contagious joy and passion. "You reminded me why I started all this work," she told Sarah, "so music could reach anywhere, no matter how remote or poor." And it has. Your seed has blossomed here too. At 65, Emily received another special honor. She was chosen to be a UNESCO Music Ambassador. It was the ultimate international recognition of her work. "Ms. Wilson," said the UNESCO Director General, "your work has transcended borders and become a model for how art can be used to build bridges between cultures and social classes. I'm deeply honored by this recognition. We hope you'll continue inspiring music projects worldwide." "As long as I have a voice and hands to play, I'll keep planting musical seeds." The nomination ceremony was broadcast globally, and Emily took the opportunity to speak about the importance of music in education. "Music," she said, "is not a luxury or a hobby. It's a basic human need. It develops discipline, creativity, sensitivity, and teamwork. Every child should have access to quality music education." After the ceremony, Emily was approached by representatives from various international organizations interested in funding music projects based on her methodology. "Miss Emily," said a representative from the International Bank, "we'd like to propose a global music education program for developing countries." "That would be wonderful, but with one condition." "What's that?" "That the projects are always managed locally by people from the community itself. Music needs roots to truly flourish." "We completely agree." At 70, Emily decided to write her third book, Letters to Young Dreamers. The book would be a collection of advice for people just beginning to pursue their dreams. "Why letters?" asked her daughter Hannah. "Because I want it to feel personal, intimate, as if I'm speaking individually to each reader." The book became hugely popular among young people worldwide. Emily received thousands of emails from readers sharing how the book's advice had helped them. One letter that moved her deeply was from a 16-year-old boy from Miami. "Dear Ms. Wilson, I live in a slum in Miami and always thought music was for rich people. After reading your book, I started learning guitar from YouTube videos. Now I can play 15 songs and am teaching other kids in my community. Thank you for showing me it doesn't matter where we're born, but where we want to go." Emily cried as she read the letter. This was exactly the kind of impact she had dreamed of having. Grace had passed away at 85, peacefully surrounded by family. Her final request was to hear Emily playing Tears of Hope on the harp. "My daughter," were her last words, "you fulfilled all my dreams and even created new ones I never knew existed." Grace's funeral was a celebration of her life. Hundreds of people touched by the matriarch's kindness and wisdom were present. Emily played at the ceremony, and there wasn't a dry eye in the church. "Grandma always said I had a special purpose," Emily said in her farewell speech. "Today, I understand that this purpose wasn't just mine. It belonged to our whole family, to everyone who believed in me. She planted the seed of faith in me, and that seed keeps growing in every life we've touched." At 75, Emily still played the harp, though now mostly for family and close friends. Her hands, despite some age-related limitations, still produced beautiful, moving music. "Grandma," said her grandson Peter, now 20 and a medical student, "do you remember the first time you played at Grandpa Richard's house?" "Like it was yesterday, my dear." "And did you know your life would change so much?" "I had no idea. I only knew I had to play from the heart and let the music speak for me." "That's what you've always taught all of us. Because it's the only way I know how to make music and to live." Richard, now 80, remained part of the family. He had become a great-grandfather to Emily's grandchildren and loved telling stories about the old days. "You know," he said to Emily during one of these family gatherings, "sometimes I think Hannah, my daughter, orchestrated all this from above." "How so?" "She knew I needed you to transform me, and she knew you needed an opportunity to show your talent. She brought us together through her music." "Maybe. Music has that kind of magic. I'm sure she's proud to see everything we've built together." The Hannah Thompson Foundation had expanded to over 30 countries. Thousands of children and young people worldwide had access to free, high-quality music education through projects inspired by the original model. Anna, now 50, had become an internationally respected leader in inclusive music education. "Emily," she said during a visit, "I want to tell you we're launching a space program." "How so?" "We're sending musical instruments to the International Space Station. Astronauts will play music in space, and the recordings will be used in educational projects back on Earth." Emily laughed. "My goodness, Anna, music really has reached every possible place, and there are still so many more places to go." Hannah's daughter had become a global reference in music therapy for the elderly. Her program, Melodies of Memory, operated in 50 countries, helping millions of seniors maintain cognitive abilities through music. "Mom," she said at 40, "I want to thank you for teaching me that music isn't just art. It's medicine, therapy, love in the form of sound. You've discovered applications for music I never imagined. Because you gave me a solid foundation to explore. You taught me the principles, and from there, I could make my own discoveries." Lucas had retired from active conducting but still composed. His symphonies were performed by orchestras worldwide, many of which included musicians who had studied in social programs. "You know," he said to Emily one quiet afternoon, "our love story began through music, and it's still carried by music every day. When you play the harp for me, I still get the same chills as the first time I heard you. And when you conduct an orchestra, I still see the same sparkle in your eyes as when we first met. Music brought us together and keeps us together. Music and love, which are deep down the same thing." At 80 years old, Emily published her final book, Memories of a Musical Life. It was a reflection on all the pivotal moments of her journey, from her humble childhood to international recognition. The book was dedicated to my mother Grace, who taught me to dream, to Hannah Thompson, who inspired me through her music, and to all the children and young people who have discovered that music can transform lives. The launch was held in a special way, simultaneously across all branches of the Hannah Thompson Music Institute worldwide. It was a global celebration of music and education. "It's strange," Emily said during the launch, "to think it all started with a cruel taunt at a party. If someone had told me that day my life would turn out like this, I wouldn't have believed it." "But you believed in music," said Anna, who was present, "and music did the rest. Music, and all the wonderful people I met along the way." Victoria, now also 80, remained one of Emily's closest friends. "You know," she said, Sometimes I think about my grandmother's harp, the one that changed her life. That harp really was magical. Actually, you were the magic. The harp was just an instrument. You brought the magic. All of us brought our own magic to this story. Emily spent her final years playing for her great-grandchildren, supporting the growth of music projects around the world, and writing letters to young musicians seeking advice. Her last public performance was at 85, in a special concert celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Hannah Thompson Foundation. She performed Tears of Hope, accompanied by an orchestra made entirely of alumni from the institutes. When she finished, the audience stood for 15 minutes, applauding not just the music, but a lifetime dedicated to changing the world through art. "Thank you," she said into the microphone, "for allowing me to live a life so full of music and love. Music doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all of us. Keep playing, keep dreaming, keep believing in the transformative power of art." Emily passed away at 87, in her sleep, with a smile on her face and her hands positioned as if still playing the harp. Her funeral was an extraordinary musical celebration. Thousands of people from around the world came to pay their respects. For 3 days, musicians of all ages and nationalities performed, playing everything from classical music to popular adaptations of Tears of Hope. The procession passed by every branch of the Hannah Thompson Music Institute in Los Angeles, and at each one, students played a musical farewell. Rachel, her daughter, gave the main eulogy. "My mother always said she wanted to be remembered, not for the medals she received or the awards she won, but for the lives she touched through music. Today, seeing all these people gathered here from every corner of the world, I can say she achieved exactly that." Emily was buried in the family tomb, beside her mother Grace. On the headstone was engraved, "Emily Wilson. She turned tears into hope through music." But Emily's story didn't end with her passing. Her ideas, her projects, and above all her example, continued to inspire people worldwide. A year after her death, UNESCO established the Emily Wilson Award to recognize inclusive music education initiatives. The first award went to a young man from Bangladesh who had founded a music school in a refugee camp. The Hannah Thompson Foundation kept growing under Anna's leadership and later under Rachel's. 5 years after Emily's death, musical projects inspired by her methodology had reached every continent, serving over 1 million children and young people. Richard lived to the age of 95, always telling the story of how a cleaner had changed his life. He established a permanent fund to ensure the institutes would continue operating indefinitely. "Emily taught me," he often said, "that true wealth isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we plant in people's hearts." Lucas, though widowed, kept composing until the end of his life. His final symphony, Eternal Emily, was performed simultaneously by 50 orchestras worldwide on the 10th anniversary of her passing. Hannah, her daughter, expanded her mother's work into areas Emily had never imagined, developing music programs for people with disabilities, trauma survivors, and the homeless. Music, as Emily had always dreamed, became truly accessible to all. Today, more than 20 years after Emily's death, her story is still told and retold. Her autobiography became a film, a play, a documentary. But most of all, it continues to inspire real people to believe in their dreams and use their talents for good. In a small African town, a 10-year-old girl plays a violin made of recycled materials, teaching other children to make music with what they have. In Asia, a group of elders gathers weekly to play traditional instruments, keeping their memories and culture alive. In Latin America, young people from the slums create their own compositions, telling their stories through melodies. None of them realize it, but they are all part of Emily Wilson's legacy. She planted a seed that keeps sprouting, blooming, and bearing new fruit in ways and places she never imagined. Richard's golden harp still stands in the main hall of the first Hannah Thompson Music Institute. A plaque beside it tells the story of how it all began. On this instrument one night in 2024, Emily Wilson played the first notes that would transform not only her life, but the lives of millions around the world. Visiting children are always moved by the story. Some ask if they can play the harp, and the guides always answer, "Of course." Emily always said music is meant to be shared. And when those children pluck the golden strings, even if they produce only simple sounds, there's something magical in the air. As if Emily's spirit is still there, whispering encouragement, reminding everyone that it doesn't matter where we start. What matters is how far we can go when we believe in music's power to transform. Emily's story proves that one person, with talent, determination, and above all love in their heart, can change the world. She began as a humiliated cleaner at a wealthy party, but ended as a woman who touched millions through music. Her life teaches us that there are no impossible dreams, only people who stop dreaming. That music, like love, knows no social, economic, or cultural barriers. And sometimes the hardest moments of our lives are just the prelude to the greatest transformations. Emily always said the most beautiful music isn't played on the grandest stages, but the kind born from the heart and received by the heart. And her own life was the most beautiful melody of all, a symphony of hope, resilience, and love that will echo through generations. The end. Now tell us what you thought of the story and where you're reading from. If you have something to share, leave us an honest comment. Do you think Emily made the right choices? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for being here with us.